Okay, guys, 7 o'clock, so it's time to start. So, the road to the Constitution. Former Fed Chair Ben Bernanke, I don't know how many of you have heard of him. He was federal chairman for a long time. And, yeah. Hey, when you forget to turn the alarms off.
I'm glad yours,
So, hi. So, for my next trick, quantitative easing. So, tonight we're going to be talking about money and the 16th and 17th Amendments. So the reason those are all put together is because the 16th and 17th Amendments happened in 1913, and the Federal Reserve Act also happened in 1913. So 1913 was a really bad year for the American people. It was pushed off as being a great thing. The 16th Amendment, you know, we're going to tax the rich. Where have we heard that before? And the 17th Amendment, well, it's only fair that we elect our representatives, right? That we elect our senators, that's only fair. And the Federal Reserve Act, well, we got to have a national bank. Everybody else does, so we got to have one too. I don't know if you can see this. The little guy in the pool, that's fiscal responsibility. The big guy trying to get into the pool, that's government spending.
He's in there.
And yeah, he's basically going to take over the pool. This is a cartoon that appeared in the Chicago Tribune in 1934. And if you look at it, there's a wagon going along, they're throwing money out, they're partying, everything's great. Down in the bottom, tell me if this sounds familiar. Plan of action for the U.S. Spend, spend, spend under the guise of recovery. Bust the government, blame the capitalists for the failure, junk the Constitution, and declare a dictatorship.
Can I get a copy of these?
That's scary.
Does any of this sound familiar?
Yeah.
2021, not 1934.
That was 1934 in the Chicago Tribune.
Today.
And yeah, I mean that's in the news today. So it's not something new that's happening. This has been happening for a long time. Government debt has been around for a long time. It hasn't been to the levels that it is now, but it's been around for a long, long time. The economy. Does government support the economy? Is there anything that government does that makes the economy go better? I see a lot of wheels turning.
They're bribing us with, what are those?
Oh, stimulus checks? Oh, you mean they give us $1,400 but borrow $14,000 to give us the $1,400? Yeah, that sounds like a good thing. Okay. Banks. Do banks support the economy? Banks profit from the economy, but they don't support the economy. The only way the economy grows is by we the people working. Because government, in order for it to spend money, has to do one of two things. It either has to take it from someone, or they have to print the money. And now it's not even they have to print the money, now they just push a button and the money magically appears. Okay, I put this on as the world's simplest IQ test. But the question is, which of these is not like the other?
I can see that song.
So we have on the left side, we have $50 of Monopoly money. In the middle, we have a $50 Federal Reserve note.
Silver certificate?
No, that's a Federal Reserve note.
Yeah.
And on the right, we have a gold coin. So, which is not like the others? The gold coin.
Precious metal.
There really is, when you come down to it, no difference between the $50 Monopoly money and the $50 Federal Reserve note, other than we put trust in the Federal Reserve note that it's worth something. The gold coin is always worth something. This is a Sears Roebuck catalog from 1900. It's a reproduction of it. Wayne, you like guns, don't you?
I'm sorry, what?
You like guns?
I sure do.
Okay.
I'm carrying.
How much, let me get my other glasses out because it's really small print. How much would you pay for a Winchester 1892 repeater?
The exposed hammer?
Yep.
Okay. Now,
Now,
about $600 used.
$600 used,
Yep.
Okay.
As per the pawn shop in Beaver.
as per the pawn shop in Beaver, okay? In 1900, that same weapon, brand new, was $12.52.
Look up a Derringer in there. Is there one right there?
Oh, I'm sure, I believe they got Derringers in here.
I'm sure they do.
Let's see, police revolvers,
Is that gonna be at the back or the front of the catalog?
well, this one's in the middle, but that's a Montgomery Ward that you had there.
Oh, okay.
I'm looking, they don't have, they're all revolvers now.
They're
But just,
probably about $2.50.
okay, so,
Compared, Glenn, compared to,
right,
150.
okay, so that Winchester 1892 model that we talked about, you said was $600?
For $600 over at Beaver Pawn Shop.
Okay. $12.52.
What?
In this, it's $12.52. Okay. Now, a $20 gold piece is about 1 ounce of gold. An ounce of gold today
Oh, yeah.
is, let's see, last week checked it was about 1,600.
Yeah.
Oh, 17 today.
Okay, it's about $1,700. Okay, so actually, if you're going from money then to money now, the gold actually has more. You can buy more gun now
You can buy 2 of them now.
than what you could buy then. But what can you buy for $20 now? A couple of bullets that go in the gun.
Yeah, a box,
Okay,
maybe 5.
So money, if it's paper, is only the value that we give it. If it's metal, a precious metal, it has intrinsic value that carries through, and inflation doesn't affect it. Yes, Wayne?
I think your illustration of the suit is the best.
Oh, yeah. So, in 1913, when the Federal Reserve Act came out, for a $20 gold piece, you could buy a really nice suit, a shirt, tie, socks, and a pair of shoes. Today, with that same $20 gold piece, you can buy a really nice suit, shirt, tie, socks, and a pair of shoes, and actually have change left over.
Actually holds its value.
So it holds its value. Paper money doesn't hold any value, it only holds the value that we assign to it. Now, why is gold more valuable than paper money? Because it has a set amount.
Intrinsic.
It's got an intrinsic value because there's a finite amount. There's only so much gold that you can have, or that can be dug up out of the earth.
And the other stuff.
The other stuff-
Recycled when it's been torn or damaged or whatever.
Right, they just print new. And even if you take a $1 bill and a $50 bill, and you didn't see the numbers on it, you can't tell the difference between the two. So it's just an arbitrary number that's set on it, where gold always has value. The founder's view on money. This is George Washington. He said, if we should use unfunded paper money or any similar species of fraud, we shall assuredly give a fatal stab to our national credit in its infancy. Paper money will invariably operate in the body of politics as spirit liquors on the human body. They prey on the vitals and ultimately destroy them. Now, there was a big fight about money. Paper money has had the effect in your state that it will ever have to ruin commerce, oppress the honest, and open the door to every species of fraud and injustice. Okay? So this is in 1787 that he's saying this. Now, what you have to realize is they just went through a Revolutionary War. And in that Revolutionary War, they were paying everybody with continental dollars. Continental dollars were a paper currency that just had a number arbitrarily attached to it, and if you accepted it, then it was good money. Now, at the time of the Constitution, when it was written, there were actually wars going on because the soldiers were losing their homes because the continental dollar was worthless. So much so that people would actually wallpaper their walls with it because it had no value, because it was paper. There was nothing attached to it. Thomas Jefferson, paper is poverty. It is only the ghost of money and not money itself. The trifling economy of paper as a cheaper medium or its convenience for transmission weighs nothing in opposition to the advantages of the precious metals. It is liable to be abused, has been, is, and forever will be abused in every country in which it is permitted. Founders really didn't like paper money.
When did they quit it? 68 or?
The gold standard?
Silver, yeah, the gold standard.
We went off, I believe it was 71 under Nixon, was when we went off the gold standard.
I know, I know when I was driving a cab in Frisco, it was in 68, a guy from the airport with a case of silver certificates. We went, and he was in a hurry to get it before, or while he could, get it switched from paper
To silver.
1 ounce gold pieces.
Now, what Wade is talking about is money that is backed by gold. So to carry around $100 in gold, or $200 in gold, or $1,000 in gold is kind of awkward. It's bulky. It's heavy. But $1,000 in paper money is, you know, you can carry it around in your wallet. It's not a big deal.
One piece of paper.
But that was also backed up by gold. So there had to be somewhere physical gold to back it up, that you can turn that paper money in to turn it into gold. Wish you could turn paper money into gold now, right?
So were there actually gold certificates? I know
Yes.
there were silver.
Yes, there were gold certificates as well. And so it was money that you could carry around that you can turn into gold, or money that you can turn into silver. And it had a separate certificate. If you look at your money that you have now, they all say Federal Reserve note. Well, what is a bank note? Everybody here, if they quote unquote own their home, has a note on that home. It's a loan. Paper money is just a loan. It's not real, except for how much we believe in it being real.
Okay, you said there was a time when they had to turn in the silver certificates?
Yeah,
Yeah,
a set date, you either exchanged it by then or keep it as a souvenir.
So if somebody was to find in an old trunk,
you're out of luck.
okay,
I mean, they're worth more than the nomination that's printed on it.
Yeah,
As a
Because
collector's
as a collector's item.
okay.
But as far as turning it in for real value in coin, that doesn't happen. We're past that.
Okay. No, I
So,
didn't find
but-
any in the trunk.
Yeah,
Just
but I mean,
because
it would be cool if you did, because it's still worth more than the number that's printed on it, just because it's so
You
rare.
go to a coin shop, and they would give you a good price, let's say $1 bill.
Mhm.
I'll bet you they'd give you a few dollars for it. But just because it's only being sold, they can get their money out of it only because it's such a novelty.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and again, like gold, it's rare. To have those now, it's a rare item because they just got destroyed because they're only worth the paper that they're printed on. And so if it's only worth the paper they were printed on, people would spend it, and because it got spent and got circulated, the bill will get old, and once bills get old, they run them through the shredder, and they print new bills. And
Buy a 1943 copper wheat back penny, I'll be your buddy.
yeah,
Hey, we'll go split the millions. How
What
about
year?
I have a,
1943.
when I was working in high school, when I was working in high school, Foster Creek, I was a manager, and I would have to get change from the bank to put in the tills
Yeah.
if I didn't have enough. I brought a bag in, and here was a roll of pennies, brand new 43s, because I was born in 43.
Were they steel?
Yeah, well, they all are
Yeah.
in 43, because they needed the copper
Oh,
for
right, yeah.
cartridges.
There was a few that made it through the copper.
What'd you do with them?
I don't think so.
Well,
What did I do with it?
Yeah.
I know I have a bunch of them still, and they're and those were uncirculated.
Yeah.
They were just shiny as pretty as can be.
I think they're worth somewhere around 40 cents or something, 40 cents.
Probably,
Yeah. Okay, so the beginning of the country, after we've gone from the Articles of Confederation and we've morphed into the Constitution, so we now have the Constitution, they have the big debate. Do we have a national bank? And as we've talked about in the past, ladies who are coming here for the first time, there are two factions. There's the Federalists. Everybody's heard about the Federalists, right? You've heard of the Federalist Papers? Okay, that's the one that was arguing in favor of the Constitution. Well, there's another group, the Anti-Federalists. We don't hear much about them. We don't hear about the Anti-Federalist Papers because the Federalists won the argument. So, Alexander Hamilton, you know, he has a play about him. He urged Congress to pass a bill establishing a national bank. He was very much in favor. In fact, he said debt was a good thing.
For who?
Well, if you're a banker, it's a good thing. If you're not a banker, it's not a good thing. You know, I mean, you can go back to Shakespeare, who was long before this. Shakespeare would talk about neither a lender or borrower be. So, the bill has gone through Congress, passed the House, passed the Senate, and made it to President Washington's desk. But he didn't sign it immediately. He wanted to know whether Congress had the authority to create a bank. There's nowhere in the Constitution that the authority is given. So, he asked Hamilton. So what do you think Hamilton said? Oh yes, we can have a bank. We can be like every other country in the world and have a national bank. Attorney General Edmund Randolph, who was one of the founders in the constitutional debates. He was really big on it. He wasn't so sure. And Thomas Jefferson said to take a single step beyond the boundaries specifically drawn around the powers of Congress is to take possession of a boundless field of power no longer susceptible of any definition. Thomas Jefferson was against having a national bank because government should not be in the business of lending money or borrowing money. Now, at the time, they did have some national debts from France for the cost of fighting the Revolutionary War. But constitutionally, they accepted those debts, said that they were going to pay off those debts, and that was what made everybody else realize that we were really going to be a viable country because we said we're going to pay our debts. It is known that the very power now proposed as a means, a national bank, was rejected as an end by the convention which formed the Constitution. So in the debates for the Constitution, they said, no, we are not going to have a national bank. We can coin money, but that's as far as we can go. We're not going to be in the banking business. The enumerated powers can all be carried into execution without a bank. A bank, therefore, is not necessary and consequently not authorized by the necessary and proper clause. That's a clause in the Constitution that says in order to carry out the powers that is vested in Congress or the government, they have the authority to do things that are necessary and proper. Thomas Jefferson says that all can be done without a bank. So we don't need to create a bank. Well, who do you think won? Alexander Hamilton won the debate. Thomas Jefferson continues on. The Constitution allows only the means which are necessary, not those which are merely convenient for effecting the enumerated powers. If such a latitude of construction be allowed to this phrase as to give any non-enumerated power, it will go to every one, for there is no one which ingenuity may not torture into a convenience in some way or other to someone of so long a list of enumerated powers. We went over those in Article 2, Section 8, the powers that are given to the government, especially with relating to taxes. It would swallow up all the delegated powers and reduce the whole process or the whole to one phase. Therefore, it was that the Constitution restrained them to the necessary means, that is to say, to those means without which the grant of the power would be nugatory. So only what is absolutely necessary can be used to enact the powers in the Constitution. Today we kind of fudge over that a little bit, or a lot. Just kind of skip over that. Just whatever's convenient, whatever makes the masses feel good.
For what? The masses are told to feel good.
Or what the masses are told to feel good. Yeah, it's even better. Alexander Hamilton. The general principle is inherent in the very definition of government and essential to every step of the progress to be made of that of the United States, namely, that every power vested in a government is in its nature sovereign and includes by force of the term a right to employ all means requisite and fairly applicable to the attainment of the ends of such power, and which are not precluded by restrictions and exceptions specified in the Constitution, or not immoral, or not contrary to the essential ends of a political society. So, the Constitution didn't explicitly say you can't have a bank. And so because it doesn't explicitly say that, Hamilton says, well, because it says we can't, doesn't say we can't have one, we're going to have a bank. But the 9th and 10th Amendments say, basically, any power not given to the United States, nor restricted to the states, is left to the people. So the people are allowed to have banks, But the government is not allowed because it's not authority that was specifically delegated to them. So this is the beginning of the twisting of the Constitution,
Yes.
1791.
Delegated.
Okay? 2 years after it's gone into effect, they're twisting it to whatever they feel like. What was the precise nature or extent of this proposition to establish a national bank at the convention, or what the reasons for refusing it, is not ascertained by any authentic document, or even by accurate recollection. Even if it were known, it would not matter, because whatever may have been the intention of the framers, that intention is to be sought for in the instrument itself. This is from Alexander Hamilton, 4 years after the signing of the Constitution. So, 4 years of memory. I don't know about you, but I can remember 4 years ago, and I can remember discussions that were had, and I can remember, and people that were at that place could remember the discussions they had, and yet we ended up with a national bank.
Speaking of memory, it
Yes.
doesn't even look like that picture in play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mean the colors changed?
Yeah, of course, it's a different
Oh,
color.
yeah. McCullough v. Maryland. So this is in 1819, so about 28 years after. It says, because of the inefficiency and corruption, the United States Bank was very unpopular, and many blamed it for the nation's economic problems. Wow. As a result, Maryland sought to regulate and tax a branch located in Baltimore. James McCullough, a bank official, brought suit. Can Congress establish a bank? Can a state tax or regulate an instrument of the national government? Among the enumerated powers, we do not find that of establishing a bank. This is a Supreme Court decision. But there is no phrase in that instrument which, like the Articles of Confederation, excludes incidental or implied powers, and which requires that everything granted shall be expressly and minutely described. Even the 10th Amendment, which was framed for the purpose of quieting the excessive jealousies which have been excited, omits the word expressly. So because that word wasn't in it, they are allowed to twist. Because in the Articles of Confederation, it was, if it's not expressly given, they don't have the authority. But because the word expressly was not put into the Constitution, it could be twisted, and twisted some more, and twisted some more, until it gets twisted to where the Founding Fathers wouldn't recognize our understanding of it today compared with their writing of it at the time. In nature, its nature requires that only its great outlines should be marked. It's a guideline, more than a rule. It's just a guideline. We should just this is, within a lifetime, within a generation, they're doing this. We must never forget that it is the Constitution we are expounding. John Marshall happens to be the longest serving Chief Justice, which was scary. So we have the nationalist views articulated by Hamilton and Marshall, eventually succumbed to states' rights view of Jefferson with the appointment, or with the President Andrew Jackson's appointment of Roger Taney as Chief Justice. So Andrew Jackson came along and he killed the National Bank. They withdrew its charter, and so the National Bank went away. So the pendulum's been going back and forth. We've had national banks, we've taken them away. We've had national banks, we've taken them away.
How long did the National Bank exist when first put in?
Let's see, Jackson was, 32? 1832. So it would have been 40 years.
That soon, huh?
Yeah. And then Lincoln brought one back. And then it went away. And then 1913 happened, and we've been stuck with it ever since. So which is constitutional money? The top is a Federal Reserve note. The bottom is a coin.
Where's your silver dollar?
I like her crown.
Okay? Congress has the authority to coin money. Meaning you take a precious metal, you put it between two dies, hammer comes down, presses on it, you now have a coin.
And it specifically says coin.
And yes. So Congress has the authority to coin money. Congress does not have the authority to print money. So how do we get money printed?
We just do it.
Because it's a Federal Reserve note that's a separate entity from Congress. It's a private bank.
But they make it sound official.
But it sounds official. There's a federal chairman that's appointed by the president, right? Isn't the Fed chair appointed by the president? And Congress approves that?
So that's how they got around it, was to create a Federal Reserve.
They created the Federal Reserve.
It's called Federal Reserve, and everybody just went right along.
Well, yeah, because we have all these rich people that have banks that were, I mean, you've seen it, It's a Wonderful Life, right?
Yeah.
And you have the banker, and the banker was evil. He was bad. And so government's going to get involved, and when government's involved, the banker's no longer evil because the government makes everything sunshine and roses.
Unless you go to an independent bank.
Okay? Well, in that same bank, or the same movie, I should say, we had a savings and loan. The Bailey Savings and Loan. And what happened in that? If you remember, there was a scene where the bank inspector came to the savings and loan, and everybody thought that they were in trouble, and so what did everybody want to do? Everybody wanted to take their money out. So there was a run on the savings and loan. And what happens if all the reserves are gone? The bank goes under, and any deposits that you had in it, well, that's just too bad.
Unless you got it out in the run.
Unless you had which?
Unless you got it out in the run.
Yeah, if you got it out in the run, and oftentimes on those runs it was pennies on the dollar. But if you notice at the end of the day when they closed, George took the $2 bills, put them in a little basket, and said, "Okay, make more."
Here's
$2 saved them in the bank. So we have commodity money. Money that has value because of it's a gold or a silver. It has intrinsic value. We have fiduciary money. This is a gold certificate. It can be turned in for $100 worth of gold at the time. It can't any longer. So it was backed by commodity. And then we have fiat money, which is just whatever we believe it says. Now, I forget how long ago it was, but here in Richfield, they had, during Christmas time, they had Santa bucks. You would take your $20 and turn it in, and they would give you $21 in Santa bucks. Now, was it of value? If the store accepted it,
You're off of Santa.
if the store accepted it, then yes, it was of value. But if they didn't accept it, then it was just a piece of paper. So you couldn't take the Santa bucks for Richfield and run up to Salt Lake and spend them. You could only spend them here. And that's kind of what's happening with our money. It's only if we believe it has value,
Even today,
even today.
you know, if you ask me to come over and build a brick wall for you, and for $100, I spend a couple of days there,
And it's gonna be a brick wall for $100 or
and, and you hand me a $100 bill, one little piece of paper for that. It's a trust.
It's a trust that
It really is.
it's actually worth something.
And hopefully I can go to this guy right here, and give him $100 and he'll build me a farm.
I'll give you a box of bullets.
Yeah,
That's almost worth that, yeah.
yeah, the projectiles first.
So, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 5. Congress shall have power to coin money, regulate the value thereof, and of foreign coin, and fix the weights and measures. So they have the authority to coin money, which has intrinsic value because it's made out of a material that has value in itself. Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1, no state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque and reprisal. So the states can't coin money. They can't emit bills of credit. They can't make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts. Interesting. In Utah, gold and silver is still legal tender to pay debts. So if you gave someone gold to pay your debt, they would have to accept it by law, but also people don't necessarily do that anymore. It was an interesting thing. I'm trying to remember who it was that was doing it. They had a really big chocolate bar.
That was mine.
Was
No, it wasn't my hands, it was.
I forget, but he was given the chocolate bar or a silver certificate that you could trade for silver. And guess what everybody took? They took the chocolate bar. Even though the piece of paper or the silver was worth 10 times what the chocolate bar was, they took the chocolate bar because the chocolate bar was something that you could immediately get the gratification out of.
I have a very rich uncle, and he went to the bank and he got $2 bills, and they were new, and he had them glued into, just peel them off.
Yeah.
He would go to these places, where kids work, they would take it.
Yeah, because what's that? $2.
$2.
Yeah.
Can't have that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the beginning of these classes, I used to carry a $2 bill with me, and I would say, whoever can correctly answer who the first president of the United States was gets this $2 bill. And you know what? I never had to give it away.
That's funny.
Let's see, just for fun, let's see if I would have to give it away here. Who was the first president of the United States?
John F. Kennedy.
George Washington.
No, he is not. He's the first president of the Constitution, but he's not the first president of the United States. First president of the United States was John Hanson. No, because we don't talk about that. Because we go for the Revolutionary War, jump to the Constitution, and then jump to the Civil War. And so we missed the period of the Revolutionary War where we had a president of the United States during the Revolutionary War, and after the Revolutionary War, up to the time of the Congress going into effect with the Constitution. So there were actually, and we'll get into this in later discussions, there were, I think, 5 presidents before George Washington.
What was the first one? Hanson?
John Hanson,
John?
yes.
Okay. I'm gonna make me some money.
Does John Hanson know that he was the president?
Yes, he does. And he did know that. Now, president, as we know the president today, but he was the first president of the United States. So he was the president of the United States in Congress assembled. Under the Articles of Confederation.
What year was this, please?
1783.
O-N or E-N?
Owen, I believe. So, doesn't get taught, you know, George Washington and the country was born on the 4th of July, right?
You're saying that's
No.
not true.
Well, what happened on the 4th of July?
Uh,
That was the Declaration of Independence for 13 countries,
Right.
13 states,
13 countries.
but they were common countries.
There were states at that time
Small
they would be equivalent to a country. So at the time of the Revolutionary War, there was 13 separate countries loosely put together under the Articles of Confederation. Well, even before that, it was just a compact for mutual defense. So there were 13 separate countries, and at the end of the Revolutionary War, it was 13 separate countries that signed the Treaty of Paris, which ended the Revolutionary War. So there were 13 separate countries.
So if they consider, if each state considered themselves a country, then
And then when did they capitalize?
When did they capitalize the United States?
Yeah,
Because if you look at the Declaration of Independence, it's a small U, it's not a capital U.
yeah, United.
It's United States of America.
When they become,
When they became the United States was after the Revolutionary War.
what year?
capital U.
1783, when the Articles of Confederation went into effect.
Okay.
And then 1787, there was a Constitutional Convention. 1789, the Constitution went into effect on March the 4th of 1789. So, when they say born on the 4th of July, that's the Hollywood version. The actual, and the other interesting thing, the document was actually signed 2 days before, so it was actually the 2nd of July that the Declaration of Independence was voted on and signed. And then there was another copy made on the 4th of July that went around to all the people.
So what happened in 1776?
We told George to,
Okay, so that was the beginning of.
that was the beginning, but it was all the colonies, or all the states, or all the countries that said we no longer want to be under British rule.
We told him to your arbitrary ways and thumb our nose.
Yes, that's the one.
Someone knows of Britain.
Yes. So, Thomas Jefferson, if the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first inflation, then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around the banks will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. This issuing power should be taken from the banks and restored to the people to whom it properly belongs. So how do loans work? Farmer works really hard, saves up $100. He decides he doesn't want to spend it yet, so he deposits it in a bank. And because he puts it in a bank, the bank will give him $5 of interest. The bank then turns around and loans that money to a borrower the bank thinks is worthy of risk of giving the money to. The bank charges the borrower $110 for the $100. So it charges $10 interest.
Five.
They bought it for $5.
Well, they bought it for $105.
Yeah,
So they made $5.
so they only made $5 on
Yeah.
Okay. Bank loads it out the $100 for $110.
Yeah.
Okay? The borrower takes $100 and invests the time and effort and capital that it purchases and creates a revenue of $130. So he's created money. So, in the end, the depositor makes $5, the bank makes $5, and the borrower makes $20. All because a farmer worked hard to save up $100. Sounds really good. That's the way money is supposed to work.
Oh,
This is Andrew Jackson going around and slaying the many-headed dragon, or the National Bank. So Andrew Jackson killed the National Bank that was created under Washington. So it was in play for about 40 years. Then along comes 1913, the Federal Reserve Act. So the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 is an act to provide for the establishment of Federal Reserve banks to furnish an elastic currency.
It's called stretching the bucket.
So if the economy's not going so well, what do? They make it easier to borrow money. And because it's easier to borrow money, there's more money that's in play. And so the money supply stretches. If the economy is going way too good, what happens? They say, wait a minute, we're going to have inflation. We can't have inflation. If we're going to have inflation, then we need to make it harder for people to borrow money. Higher interest. Okay? Those that are around for the late 70s, early 80s, when interest rates on homes were not 3%,
20.
not 4, not 5, not 10, not 15.
Carter.
Under Carter, they were up to 21% on a home, not a credit card, a home. That's elastic currency. It was supposed to stop depressions and boom economies. It was supposed to keep it nice and steady and even.
But did it?
No. So under fractional reserve banking, which is what we're under now, we're not under regular banking rules. A farmer works hard and earns $100. He decides he doesn't want to spend it yet, so he deposits in the bank, and the bank gives him $105 for doing so.
nope.
The bank then turns around and loans $900 to a borrower it thinks is worthy of the loan, because the bank is only required to keep 10% on reserve. It creates $900 out of thin air. The bank charges $1,000 for the $900 that it created out of thin air. The borrower takes the $900 to buy capital and invests his time and effort in order to create a revenue of $1,200. In the end, the depositor makes $5, the bank makes $1,000, and the borrower makes $200. Under fractional reserve, under the Federal Reserve. All because a farmer worked hard to save up $100. Okay. Anybody take accounting? Accounting classes? And there they have T accounts. On one side you list your assets, the other side you list your liabilities, and they both have to add up to the same. Okay? So you have reserves and loans of $10 in reserves, $90 in loans, makes $100 in assets, right? Deposits of $100, total liabilities of $100. Okay, that all adds up fine. Now, Second National Bank takes the $90 that was loaned as a liability, keeps $9 in reserves, loans out $81, assets of $90, total liabilities of $90, everything adds up the same, except for what? There's now $81 that just, poof, appeared out of thin air. Because you're only required to have 10% in reserves. Getting upset yet? U.S. price levels from 1665 to 2005. What happened right around here?
What year was that? Or what does that say? I can't read.
It's about 1968, 1970.
Gold?
We went off the gold standard. Seems like that was a pretty good thing to have. Everything just went up and up and up. You know, if we look at the Sears Roebuck Company, what was going on in 1900? I mean, things just kept pretty steady.
They printed a lot of catalogs.
Yeah.
Keep up with.
This is a map of the Federal Reserve districts. So each district is over a certain portion of the United States for their economy. They have a board of governors. They have cities that print money. They used to coin money, but now they just print money, and actually it's even worse than that. They don't even print money anymore, they just push a button. Because we all carry around this piece of plastic, right? This piece of plastic that's money. Well, what happens to that piece of plastic if there's not something in the bank to back it up? It just means you keep borrowing more and more and more.
Do you think we're gonna make it to a real cashless society?
That's the goal. And I think it's we're getting pretty close to it right now. I mean, even if you go to Bitcoin, Bitcoin is a cashless society. Bitcoin doesn't exist. You can't hold a Bitcoin in your hand.
But we hear it's growing.
Oh, it's growing immensely. I mean, the value of it, and again, that's because somebody says, I believe that's valuable. But you can't hold it in your hand. It has no intrinsic value. It just has whatever value somebody puts on it.
Sounds like the same, more of the same.
Yeah.
The Federal Reserve.
Yeah, it is. It depends on what value you put on it, your trust in it.
There's a movie called Player One Ready. And in this somewhat futuristic show, all the people live by virtual reality that somebody created. This really famous, rich guy created this virtual reality. And within that virtual reality, everybody exists. So they do their gaming, they do their shopping, everything in that virtual reality. All their money's tied in there. And so if they want to go down to the shop and buy something, they just put on their goggles, go down, and voila. They purchase it there, and then it shows up. So that's kind of the...
You mean like Amazon?
Bitcoin is...
And it's called what?
Ready Player One.
Ready Player One?
Yeah.
Ready Player One.
Yeah. Centralized money is centralized power. I see some looks at the screen behind me. In his Communist Manifesto, published in 1848, Karl Marx proposed 10 measures to be implemented after the proletariat takes power, with the aim of centralizing all instruments of the production in the hands of the state. Proposal number 5 was to bring about the centralization of credit in the banks of the state by means of a national bank with state capital and exclusive monopoly. Another on this platform of 10 is a heavy and progressive income tax, which not pretty soon we have seen since 1913.
Yeah.
Before 1913, there was no income tax. And yet the government somehow functioned.
I thought Abraham Lincoln had a head tax.
He did. It was unconstitutional, and it ended.
Okay.
Because the Constitution said you're not allowed to have a head tax, which is what income tax is.
How long did he get away with it?
It was to fight the war.
I understand.
Till his death.
Okay, so it was a temporary tax.
It was a
like-
temporary tax to fund the war.
Just like income tax was.
Just like
supposed to-
income tax was supposed to be a temporary tax.
Okay.
From what? What would income tax from?
Well, income tax was supposed to fund, and the way they sold it was, it was just going to tax the rich. The rich were going to pay their fair share.
Oh, you mean you
Well, no, apparently they weren't in 1913. The rich weren't paying their fair share. And so we're going to tax the rich. And you know what's interesting? You know who some of the lead people were that were advocating for this?
The rich?
The rich. The Rockefellers of the world.
So they do all along membership everybody and make the
Yes.
people pay it.
Because they didn't earn their money through income. They weren't paid a salary. They weren't paid a wage. They earned their money
From what they let you.
from what they lent.
Loophole.
They own the banks.
Warren Buffett. Oh, we need a higher income tax on rich people like me. Well, you know what? There's a secret. The federal government will accept any money that you want to give them. If he truly believed that they needed to raise the income tax on rich people like him, he would voluntarily pay it. Because income tax is voluntary tax, right?
Supposedly at the time.
Supposedly that's what they say.
The second time it was voluntary.
Yeah, it supposedly was voluntary, but try not paying it and see what happens.
Well, it doesn't say it's voluntary anymore.
No, it's not voluntary anymore. It's, yeah. And the tax code went from 400 pages in 1913 to 70,000 pages today. Anybody that says they know the tax code
Yeah.
is a liar. There is nobody that could ever know the tax code.
So,
Just a little out in the weeds. Taxes, when you bite into a hamburger, there's 50 plus taxes that have been paid on that. You buy a suit, like what we've been talking about, a suit, there's over 100, I think it's 120 some odd taxes that have been paid on that suit. And all we think of is what we pay. Oh, taxes aren't very much, but if you
all of
look
those
at the whole picture, man, they must make bucks.
Yeah.
That's it.
Huh?
It's a pyramid scheme.
Yes, Becky.
It really is, isn't it?
Go ahead, go first.
No, I was scratching my chin.
Oh, okay, I did that too. So, I remember hearing this story that, so they tried to dissolve the income tax, the
Right.
temporary income tax, and they wanted to keep it going. So correct me where I may be wrong, because it was years ago that I heard this. And so they went to Disney, and Disney put out little cartoons of being patriotic by paying your income tax. And then everybody started paying income tax to be patriotic. But it was voluntary.
I don't know about that, so that would be something I would have to look out. But government works through propaganda,
Mhm.
and that's just, I mean, if you look during World War II, what was the big thing? Every movie house had it. Buy victory bonds. Not war bonds, buy victory bonds. And so they would go about trying to get you to do things as your patriotic duty.
And again, they use the word,
Yeah.
war is an ugly word.
War's an ugly word, but victory, victory's wonderful.
Everybody wants
Yeah.
victory.
Alan Greenspan, the stock market, while he is talking, would rise and fall, depending on what words he used. So this is what he said. In the absence of the gold standard, there is no way to protect savings from confiscation through inflation. This is the shabby secret of the welfare status tirades against gold. Deficit spending is simply a scheme for the confiscation of wealth. Gold stands in the way of this insidious process. It stands as a protector of property rights. If one grasps this, one has no difficulty in understanding the status antagonism toward the gold standard. Because if we inflate money, you know, we're going in debt, right? A lot of debt.
Perpetual slaves.
Okay. Well, how are we ever going to pay that debt off? Well, if it's inflation, if we inflate the money supply, then that debt becomes less. Because there's more money. You know, Zimbabwe tried this. The Weimar Republic tried this. The Weimar Republic was pre-World War II Germany.
Okay. I was going to say, I don't remember
You,
that country.
you don't remember that country.
Yeah.
Pre-World War II was the Weimar Republic, and they were printing money to get out of debt. And it became so bad that they would take a wheelbarrow full of money to buy a loaf of bread, and they wouldn't worry about people stealing the money in the wheelbarrow, they would worry about people stealing the wheelbarrow. Because the money was so much. And in Zimbabwe is a modern version of the same thing. They would print money to pay debts. Well, eventually, if you print a whole bunch of money, what happens? The more you have of something, does it become worth more or worth less? Worth less. And so if you keep printing and printing and printing and printing and printing, it becomes worth less. As we saw on that chart.
Didn't somebody do that with, what was it, shares and railroad? Was it scam? They print more shares?
Well, that would be, I mean, I would imagine it happened with railroads, but that was the 80s with junk bonds. Michael Milliken.
No, this is way back in the
Yeah.
1800s with the railroad thing.
Well, yeah, and because there was no way to really track it down, some things like that happen quite often.
So, Glenn,
Yeah,
in answer to your question, the U.S. government used Disney cartoons to convince Americans that paying taxes is a privilege. So they did do that. It was during World War II. The federal government needed an easily recognizable face to explain the process that was unrecognizable to many Americans at the time, because many Americans weren't wealthy enough to pay tax. So they reinstituted this new tax, and it was all to fund the continuation of the war. And they used Donald Duck and things like that to instigate the mighty pen and
Yeah,
do your
yeah,
part,
and
be a
you pay
patriot,
taxes.
you know. So it's kind of what they tried to do with the mask mandate. Remember, they said, be Christ-like, love your fellow neighbor, wear a mask. They really tried to pour that onto us, but
They still are.
yeah.
well, some of us
Get a
are really
vaccine,
divergent
darn
views,
it.
so
I
Yeah.
walked into a sacrament meeting this last Sunday. I walked right up, maybe 4 rows back, right straight from the pulpit, and I was late. And I walked in and I was the only person, it was our state conference in Monroe. And here's the whole state president, you know,
They all had the masks on.
Yeah.
You did.
everybody did.
Oh, I'm
The
so
one
sorry.
person there that didn't,
You.
and the lunkhead
We're
walked
up.
right up to the front.
That was you? Good for you.
Just
And I did, I
as Sean's coming up, we got a video coming up. But within one generation of the creation of the Federal Reserve, we had the biggest depression ever known in the United States. within one generation from 1913 to 1930, well, 29.
29.
Well, 1929 was when we had the crash.
Yeah, and the Spanish flu.
Yeah, well, Spanish flu was 1918, 1919.
Yeah.
It was the end of World War
My grandfather died,
I. Okay. Funny movie until we get to the end, and it's not so funny.
Are you putting the movie on now?
Yeah, we're gonna play a movie.
Where's the popcorn?
What can I do for you today? I would like to raise my debt limit. Excuse me? My debt limit, I'd like to raise it. Because the last time I checked, Mr. Smith, you were in serious debt. Yeah, it's pretty bad. Think we should raise that limit? Yeah, it says here you're $140,270 in debt. Right, so I figured we should raise that limit to about $170,000. I just bought a 60-inch flat screen. Have you ever been to Australia? No. Leaving tomorrow, mate. You should check it out. Great parasailing. Do you have some new income that I don't know about? No, I'm still making about 21 grand a year. Okay. And are you still spending $38,000 a year? That's what it says. So you're adding $17,000 a year in debt. Oh, is that what it comes out to? Debt limit going up. Ding. Have you made any cuts in your expenses? Oh, of course, yes. My wife and I cut $380 out of our annual budget. It's $380. Oh no. Okay, so you're adding, okay, so you're adding $17,000 a year to your $140,000 in debt, and you cut $380. Well, you say it like that, it makes it not sound like a lot. Hey, maybe you should think about generating some new income, maybe a new job, maybe ask for that raise. Oh, asking for that raise, I'm not comfortable, that's an awkward conversation. I've always been able to raise my debt limit. Yeah, well, this is a little different. Well, how? We're in the middle of a recession, and your credit rating will plummet if you continue to go along this path. I don't understand it. You don't see how bad this is, do you? I got my budget by $380. Are you kidding? I'm sorry, Mr. Smith. We can't help you. You're just a little one. I'm very sorry. My wife is going to lose it. I mean, $380 is bad enough. This is going to end our marriage. We stopped talking to each other for a month. The baby was totally freaked out. Wait. You have kids? Yeah. Yeah. Sign there. Oh, right. Our kid's a blessing. I mean, she's got plenty of time to deal with all this, right? Absolutely. Are we all set? You're all set. All right. Let's go, kiddo. We gotta meet Mommy at the car store. I think this is yours. Thank you. Enjoy. Thanks.
Now we're gonna finish all the videos with that. So,
That was good.
funny video, right?
Yeah.
Except that
But none's not so funny.
it's not so funny
No,
because,
Not real, but
oh, it is real.
the baby, yeah, that's all we're doing to our
Okay,
children.
2011, our federal debt was $14 trillion. That's the 140,000 that we're talking about. Our income was $2.1 trillion. That's the $21,000 that was his income. He was spending $38,000 or $3.8 billion. We're adding $1.165 trillion of debt every year. Now, they had sequester funding, where they took $38 billion out of the budget. 38 billion, not much, right? that was the whole argument, Mom and Dad were arguing, the Republicans and the Democrats were arguing about raising the debt limit. They wanted to raise it to 17 trillion. Well, in March of 2017, so just 6 years later, we went from 14 trillion to almost 20 trillion. Our income goes way up. But you know what else went way up? Our spending. So spending always goes up. You can never earn enough to balance it out. Now you want to really be scared? That was March 22nd of this year.
You know what they need to do?
Okay, 10 years ago, 14 trillion, 28 trillion. Our federal spending, this is what's on the books. It's not the actual. The actual is actually much worse than that. Our new debt in this fiscal year is $3 trillion. Now, all my life, I've heard about the debt bomb. Ronald Reagan, I just saw a show, he was on the Tonight Show. And it was a travesty that we had a deficit, a spending for that year of $58 billion.
And is trying to balance it.
And he was trying to balance it out, $58 billion. I would love to have a deficit of $58 billion today.
Glenn,
Yes.
just quickly, give you an idea how much a trillion is. All I see is L-L-I-O-N. It's so simple, that's easy to grab. You can wrap your head around it. Try wrapping your head around this. Let's work with seconds. Okay, 60 in a minute, 60 times that in an hour, times 24, and you've got 1 day. That is 86,400. Write it down if you want. I've done it with the calculator a lot of times.
86 what?
86,400.
It's 60 in a minute, 60 in an hour, times 24. It's 86,400 in a day, seconds. Okay. Now, do you want to know how much a trillion is? Trillion of those seconds? How many years do you think? Try 31,000 years. Try that.
I have an idea.
And wrap your head around a trillion.
Let's get the federal government to start mass producing weapons. Instead of trying to take it from us, let's get them producing mass firearms and ammunition. Then every once in a while you throw a freaking Democrat or a president or somebody in there and say, oh, we're coming after your guns. We run out like crazy idiots and buy all the ammo and all the guns we can get. Builds the freaking, or starts paying down the deficit. Then when they catch up, then you just start the process over again.
Not when you have Joe to let how many illegals in we're paying for it.
Well,
That's really just diminished the
Yeah.
last year of us.
see, what needs to happen is we need to get back to constitutional spending. And if we got back to constitutional spending, national defense, that's about it.
As far as expenditure, yeah.
As far as expenditures.
Yeah. And
Everything
this is planned.
Or I should say national defense and post roads.
Now what?
Post roads, roads for the post office. That's constitutionally mandated.
Yeah.
Outside of that, everything else that the government is spending is not constitutionally allowed. But it happens because, well, we should be taking care of our fellow man, right?
Not in our current government. We only take care of the government.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's,
They have loans to give money to us.
that's how, that's, but,
And the rest
That's
of
the
the
Yeah.
world.
road trip that they.
but that's how it's sold. We're supposed to take care of our fellow man. We're supposed to be kind and generous.
To the Congress.
All that was happening before government took it over. It was happening with churches, it was happening with communities, it was happening with philanthropic organizations. But now, instead of churches and family and philanthropic organizations taking care of the needy, government does it.
Well, aren't the churches kind of, excuse me, sucking off the tin of the government too, like the 501c? They need to start stepping back from there.
Well, it means they don't pay taxes, doesn't mean that they get money, it means they don't pay taxes.
Which means they're getting
On
money
pro-
in the end picture.
Well, here's the deal. If we went back to let's go through the 16th Amendment and then we'll talk about this. Okay. So the 16th Amendment doesn't repeal anything previously in the Constitution. Previously in the Constitution, it was not constitutional to lay taxes on income. You weren't allowed to have a head tax. Taxes only came by buying things with the prices already put into it. Like if you buy cigarettes, cigarettes have a tax built into it. If you buy gasoline, if you look at the gas pumps, they'll have it broken down into how much money goes to the federal government, how much money goes to the state government, some places how much money goes to local. Before the 16th Amendment, the vast majority of revenues raised for government was on the sale of alcohol. Alcohol fueled the United States. That's why bootleggers were it wasn't illegal. Well, at the time it was illegal to make moonshine. But there was bootlegging going on before alcohol was legal. The bootlegging that was going on was selling alcohol without paying taxes on it. That was bootlegging before the Prohibition. So the 16th Amendment gave Congress the power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever sources derived without apportionment among the several states and without regard to any census or enumeration. So previous to this, taxes for the federal government came from the states. The states collected taxes according to their population. If you had a more populous state, you owed more taxes to the federal government than if you had a less populous state. So California would owe a lot of taxes because they have a high population. Utah wouldn't owe so much because we have a small population. So taxes were apportioned before the 16th Amendment according to your population. So the states paid taxes to the federal government.
Off of what?
However they decided to collect it.
Okay.
So just like today, you have certain states that don't have income tax. Nevada doesn't have an income tax. Florida doesn't have an income tax. And so they collect taxes using other sources. So after the 16th Amendment, that went away. They can collect money or taxes on your income. When men get in the habit of helping themselves to the property of others, they cannot easily be cured of it. The New York Times in a 1909 editorial opposing the very first income tax. So Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1. This is the authority for the federal government to tax. It says to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. But all duties, imposts, excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. Is income tax uniform?
Federal income tax is, isn't it? No?
It's a graduated tax. If you earn more money, you pay more taxes. A uniform tax would be everybody pays a set amount of taxes. Or a percentage of taxes. Everybody pays the same percent.
Now, is that what that said just before this? Even, my neighbor living across the border would say, pay the same as me, all the way across the United States? Is that what it was saying prior?
On which,
That one, right, yeah.
this, to lay and collect taxes? No, it was a graduated tax even then.
Okay.
Before that, they would collect taxes from what is called excise taxes or impost taxes. So that's if you, excise and impost is the same. Everybody pays. So when you buy goods or services, there's
East Coast to West.
East Coast and West Coast, North, South, it doesn't matter. That tax is all uniform. So the gasoline tax is an excise tax, and that's what supposedly is used to fund our highways, but it doesn't.
That's what now, about 45 cents a gallon?
Somewhere around there, and about 27 cents for state taxes.
I thought that whole 45 was for the highways.
Federal highways.
So on the gas pump.
On the gas pump, it's broken down into two different groups, in some places 3. So it's either federal tax, state tax, or sometimes they have a local tax. So Article 1, Section 9, Clause 4 says no capitation or other direct tax, income tax is a direct tax, unless in proportion to the census or enumeration herein before directed to be taken. So income tax is a direct tax. It's a tax on you just because you're breathing. Now, I'm not saying don't pay your income tax because you'll wind up in jail. So I'm not one of those that says, well, income tax is illegal and we shouldn't pay it, and that will just have you thrown in jail.
Now, there are some states where the air is very expensive. And in Nevada it isn't.
Oh, is that, okay.
Yeah, just north of Brent.
Yeah.
But the
So-
IRS is
what?
not an entity of the United States, is it? Of the government?
Internal Revenue Service?
Yes.
Not really.
I thought it was.
Technically,
a private corporation.
technically the IRS is part of the Secret Service, which is a whole other story. But,
Oh, what we don't know.
yeah. Okay,
Will hurt us.
just because we're short on time to go through this and the next amendment, we'll go through it quick. But the top tax bracket in 1913, was 7%. In 2013, it was 39.6. Donald Trump brought it down to, I believe, 32%. It's being proposed to raise up again. The tax bracket range was from 1% to 7%. Now it's from 10% to 39%. The top tax bracket threshold, and this is in 2013 dollars, was 11.6 million. Was how much you had to earn in 1913 in today's dollars. So it's a little confusing on the way this chart goes out. Today the top tax bracket starts at $450,000. The family standard deduction in today's money would be $93,000. In 2013, it was $12,200. It is now $24,600, I believe.
Don't you have those backwards?
No, the reason it's to show how much money you had to earn in today's money in 1913. That's why the numbers are so big in 1913 compared to 2013,
Yeah.
to show how high it was a taxing of the rich, the ultra rich. Where now it's everybody's getting taxed. So it's a little confusing on, so in 1913, 1040s that were filed was 358,000. In 2013, it was 140 million. Total pages of tax code in 1913 was 400, which even then would be pretty convoluted. 73,954 pages of tax code. Okay, that's a stack somewhere around here of tax code. Anybody that says they understand the code is lying.
And don't you think that is very deliberate?
Oh yeah, because a lot of things that go into the tax code is something that congressperson will put in for a special interest group or to specify a specific entity is going to get this tax break. And so that's why it's so convoluted and hard to understand. The 17th Amendment. Everybody says, well, this is a wonderful amendment because we get to vote on who our senators are going to be. It sounds really great, right? We want to have a voice in who our senators are going to be.
How were they chosen before?
They were appointed by the state legislature. Okay? The Senate was to represent the states. The House of Representatives was to represent the people. So the Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, elected by the people thereof for 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote. The electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for the electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislatures. When vacancies happen in representation of any state in the Senate, the executive authority of such state shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies, provided that the legislature of any state may empower the executive thereof to make temporary appointments until the people fill the vacancies by election as the legislature may direct. So today, the senator resigns, dies, or is appointed to some other business. The governor then fills the vacancy until an election can be held, so that there's always a full quorum of senators. In the House of Representatives, it's different. If a member of the House dies or quits or is otherwise removed from office, they have to wait until the next election cycle before they get a new person elected for that. The reason being is because originally, as I said, the states were to be represented in the Senate so that states had some say in what happened. This amendment shall not be so construed as to affect the election or term of any senator chosen before it becomes valid as part of the Constitution. So prior to the 16th and 17th Amendments in the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, the state legislatures had say in the Senate. So they would say who the senators were. They would tell the people in the Senate, we don't want to increase taxes, because prior to the 16th Amendment, if there was an increase in taxes, that meant that the state had to collect more taxes. And so they didn't want to collect more taxes, so they would say, don't vote for more taxes. And the people would always, the state would say, hey, people, do you want more taxes? And what's everybody going to say? No, we want no more taxes. We're done with taxes. The people could go to the House of Representatives and say, we want more taxes, but the state legislature would be saying no. If the 17th Amendment wasn't in effect, we would not have Obamacare, because there was a majority of states that signed on to a lawsuit trying to get rid of Obamacare. And if it was a majority of states that signed on to that lawsuit to get rid of it, then the majority of the senators would listen to what the state legislature said, because they were the representatives of the state legislatures in the Senate and the federal government. But because they now listen to we the people, we leave the state legislatures out of it. The people say what the Senate is supposed to do, the people say what the House of Representatives is supposed to do. but nobody from the state legislature has any representation in the federal government. So now, the federal government can say, you state legislatures must do this. And if you don't do this, then we're not going to give you any money that we took from you in the first place.
It sounds like they're good for nothing, they're just sitting there.
Well, they do whatever they can for the state. But like all things that are supposedly good for us, if you look at the alternative or what the true motive is in it, it doesn't turn out to be they're looking out for our best interests.
They twist a lot of words.
They do twist a lot of words.
That's true.
Oh, it sounds really good. Chicken in every pot, car in every garage. Sounds good, right? We're going to give everybody a basic income. Well, everybody wants a basic income. Well, the thing is they don't tell you how that basic income comes about,
Or how low it is.
or how low it is. But what also happens when the government gives you a basic income?
Well, there's taxes.
The government then also can tell you what to do.
So Glenn,
Yes.
all this is off subject, so with this $1.9 trillion new bill that Biden passed, how does that regulate within the Constitution now? Because
It does not.
it sounds like you really pushed it right on through, and most Republicans are like, nay, some were like, yeah, we need that, but
Yeah.
There were not any Republicans that voted for it. So how that bill got passed is they passed it as a budget. And all budgets have to be passed on a yay or nay vote. And so because they put it as part of the budget, it only needed a simple majority in the Senate.
so now, how does it pertain to what he's trying to do now with banning assault weapons and
Okay.
ammunition?
Banning assault weapons is something he's now trying to do by executive order.
Okay,
And by executive order, it will not stand up in the court.
well, it doesn't sound like they're gonna quickly move on to do anything about it.
No, it's something that they're gonna keep, what they're gonna eventually try
Isn't it
doing.
just on federal level though?
What? The
What he's
ban?
trying to do, yeah.
Well, it's a federal level that is going on, but federal level is what's gonna affect us.
Okay.
So, that's the end of our discussion this week. Next week, we go into, let's see, Prohibition, the repeal of Prohibition, how we got NASCAR.
How we got the NASCAR.
Yeah. If it wasn't for the Constitution, you wouldn't have NASCAR.
Huh. Is this gonna be a repetitive class, like
It's, you can look, all these videos we've recorded all these sessions, so you can actually go back and watch them.
so you're not gonna have any more once you're done?
No, as I've told anybody, I will sit down in the household if you want to get a group together. I will do as